the Director General at the Department of Arts and Culture, Mr. Vusumuzi Mkhize, the Chairperson of the Luthuli Museum, Mr. Important Mkhize, the Chairperson of the Luthuli Foundation, Mr. Mthunzi Luthuli, Dr. Albertina Luthuli and the Luthuli family, the Luthuli Museum, members of the Council, members of the Council of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, the University of KwaZulu-Natal, members of Executive Management, deans, academics and staff, students, alumni, captains of industry, members of the Grootville family, Grootville, members of the media, distinguished guests, all protocols observed. Welcome. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this, the University of KwaZulu-Natal's Graduate School of Business and Leadership, and the venue for this year's Chief Albert Luthuli Memorial Lecture. And it's always a great pleasure to be here for this great occasion. A tradition now really on the calendar, not just in this part of the world where Chief Albert Luthuli spent the bulk of his life, but for the whole country and the continent, I think. So to all of you that are here in the room, welcome to you. And to those of you who are watching us online at the moment, welcome, thanks for tuning in. The SABC News channel will be joining us shortly. Now, for those of you who are here for the first time and perhaps have heard about this lecture, it really is all about promoting the principles and the values of Chief Albert Luthuli, namely about peace, human rights, justice, and the coexistence of people in harmony, irrespective of race, color, and creed. And this is what we're here to do, largely through the lecture itself, but also focusing on some of the events and issues that the country is facing and the continent is facing at this time. So we're very pleased this year to have with us the Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa, Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng, to deliver, which is now the 14th Chief Albert Luthuli Annual Memorial Lecture. He joins a long list of speakers that have graced the stage in the past, including former presidents Thabo Mbeki, Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia, Joaquim Chissano of Mozambique, Jacob Zuma, Festus Mogae of Botswana, former National Assembly Speaker Dr. Frini Ginwala, and who can forget Arts and Culture Minister Nathi Mthethwa, just among the few. So it's a great privilege for us to have with us the Chief Justice to deliver this year's lecture. And a little bit later on, after he's delivered this lecture, we'll also give you an opportunity to question him, much like the way he questions witnesses when they appear before the Constitutional Court. But we look forward to that conversation with him, and I think that that's really the form it will take. And please, can I just ask you to think about the millions of people who are not in this room, so you are their voices. And so ask questions, engage, and let's leave here today a little bit richer, remembering Chief Albert Luthuli, but also contextualizing his contribution, his life, in a useful way for people in our time and the times that we're living through. All right, so with that said then, also just a reminder, particularly if you're watching and streaming, the hashtag to use for social media is hashtag Luthuli Lecture and hashtag Luthuli Remembered. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin. And it's my great pleasure now to call upon stage the Deputy Vice Chancellor, University of KwaZulu-Natal, to say a few welcome words. Please welcome Professor Albert Modi.
The Honorable Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa, Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng, our Chancellor, the Director General of the Department of Arts and Culture, the chairperson of the Luthuli Museum, the chairperson of the Luthuli Foundation, Dr. Albertina Luthuli and the Luthuli family, the Luthuli Museum members of the council, the members of the University of KwaZulu-Natal Council, the members of the executive management of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, the deans, academics, staff, our students, our stakeholders and alumni, the captains of industry, the members of the Crowdville community, members of the media, distinguished guests, all protocols observed. It is a great pleasure that I got the opportunity to be invited here to welcome you all. I was reminded that although I'm a lecturer, I'm not here to give a lecture. My lectures take about 2 hours and students leave to go to the next lecture. So I promise I'm not going to be a lecturer today. But on behalf of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, we are very proud to be associated with the legacy of Chief Albert Luthuli. It's been 14 years now, and I'm sure everybody will agree with me that 14 years is not a short period of time. Chief Luthuli was a highly respected man of peace, a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize, which was presented to him in Oslo in 1961. The reason being that he struggled successfully and innovatively against apartheid. He was the first African to receive this honor. I'm very pleased to say that the university is committed to working together with the museum and the family, as well as all the structures that are involved in keeping Chief Albert Luthuli's legacy alive. When I thought about today, one thing that came to mind, which I believe is of particular interest to us as the University of KwaZulu-Natal, is how the vision and mission of the Albert Luthuli Museum align with our vision and mission as the university. And in this context, I particularly wish to quote Objective 3 of the Albert Luthuli Museum,
They must cut to my camera.
which states, and I quote, to conduct research and contribute towards the advancement
Oh, Madlandona wasikhumbuza. Wasikhumbuza indaba ezibuhlungu kangaka. A very good afternoon once again. We are still coming to you live from the outside of the official venue, which is the Graduate School of Business and Leadership at the University of KwaZulu-Natal's Westville campus in Durban. And of course, it's just a matter of minutes before the official program inside begins, where Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng is expected to channel his address leaning towards the issue of land. We will recall that recently the report to amend the Constitution, to amend Section 25 was adopted, even though it will be adopted and signed over towards the end of this month. It is expected to be a very long process towards amending the Constitution itself. It has been over the past year a very debatable topic, so we look forward to seeing what Justice Mogoeng has to say in respect of that in particular, but of course not abandoning the main reason, which is the celebration and commemoration of Chief Albert Luthuli. The main objectives revolving around his leadership, his objectives, which included peace amongst people of different colors, regardless of color or creed, justice, most importantly, as well as peace. But above and beyond that, for the past years, there's been quite topical matters with regards to the late Chief Albert Luthuli's passing, his life, his legacy. Over the years, we do witness an annual event where the family, in conjunction with the Luthuli Museum, seek to refresh his memory to young generations moving forward, but it remained a constant engagement about his passing. There seems to have been more questions than answers. But to engage me further as to the latest developments of that particular issue, I have with me the grandson of Chief Albert Luthuli, Mthunzi Luthuli. A very good afternoon to you, Madlandun.
Good afternoon.
What seems to be the latest developments as far as the issue, or rather the mysterious passing of the late Albert Luthuli? We do understand that in recent years the family has been very consistent in requesting that his murder case be reopened and reinvestigated as to seek to find the actual reason of his passing. Where are we with that particular matter?
The inquest or the investigations will commence in December, this coming December, in a few weeks' time. We have always known, as a family, that Chief Luthuli was not hit by a train. We've always known that he was murdered. It was a murder or an assassination. So we've always known that. What we do not know is who ordered it and who carried it out. But if you look at the circumstances surrounding his death on the day, there is enough for us to get to the truth. And we believe that, certainly by the end of next year, we should be in a position to know exactly what happened.
Seeing that the investigations are being reopened in the very month in which he passed away in 1967, let's take it back to the type of person he was within the family, seeing that your close relations with him give you first-hand experience as the type of person he was. It is, of course, merged with the main objective being remembered, or rather refreshed today, but perhaps you, as someone who's of family, might have a different perspective, or rather more than what we know?
Well, family will always know more about the man inside the family. Generally, usually the public only sees the man when he's outside of the home. So Chief Luthuli was a very happy person. He was a very humorous individual. He liked talking to all family members, his children, and most of all, he loved his wife, In fact, their relationship is something that there's a story to be told around that. For instance, very few people know that very few of Chief Luthuli's speeches went out into the public domain without having been sort of approved by Ugogo. what would happen is Chief Luthuli would sometimes write his speeches. He would only start late in the evening because he would be busy during the day. And he would finish sometimes around 1 o'clock at night. And he has to deliver the speech the next day. But before he did that, he would then ask my grandmother to read it and critique the speech. But because it would be 1 o'clock at night, he would go to the kitchen first, make tea, take out Gogo's favorite biscuits, put them on the tray, and then he would go and wake her up, and apologize and say, I made tea for you because, it's late at night. And then Gogo would read the speech and critique it, and my grandfather would then go back and fix it, and only then would he be confident to go out and deliver a speech. And a lot of his speeches actually were critiqued by Gogo before he, So, those are some of the things that are not in the public domain, but that show the kind of gentleman he was.
And of course, seeing the caliber of leadership that he had, and the type of contributions he had towards fighting for the liberation of this country, serving 15 years as the president of the ANC and one of the most renowned and well-known leaders of that particular movement. Earlier on, speaking to Baba Umkhize, we did highlight that he managed to gently merge his two worlds of faith and politics and making sure that one doesn't overpower the other. His leadership style was grounded or perhaps guided by his faith. Seeing the type of leader he was and some of the objectives that he fought for, would you say he would be happy with the current state of the country right now? Because we do understand that he was one of those renowned leaders who fought for the very same liberation that we acquire right now.
Look, overall, I think Chief Luthuli would not be 100% happy with where we are at the moment. And I think specifically there are three things I think that he would be unhappy with. The first one, I think, is the general decline in the quality of leadership that we have in this country at the moment. And I'm talking very generally. I'm not talking about any one individual specifically. But in those days, leaders had to be very ethical, very responsible, and he was an ethical and responsible leader. And that's why he was able to achieve so much. And unfortunately, these days, we have people in leadership positions whose sole objective is to line their pockets in very unethical ways. So that would definitely not sit well with him. I think the other two things that he wouldn't be happy with is what we're going to talk about today, the issue of land and the economy. As you know, Chief Luthuli he owned land, he was a farmer, he saw the dispossession that was happening systematically, where African people were being dispossessed of land, and he fought for land restitution and for the return of land to their people. The problem today is that we haven't actually progressed in that, and so that would not sit well with him. The other thing is also the state of the economy. Chief Luthuli was a farmer. He was an entrepreneur. Very few people know that. And he believed very much in the self-sufficiency of black people and black farmers and black business people. And so the fact that the economy is still not in the hands of black people is something that obviously he wouldn't be happy with, because it's something that he fought for all his life. Yes.
Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
That was, of course, Mthunzi Luthuli, who was the grandson of Chief Albert Luthuli, highlighting one of Chief Albert Luthuli's concerns, which we expect to be some of the elements that will be addressed by Justice Mogoeng, particularly the issue of land. It seems like it was one of his most passionate points as well during his time of leadership, but it seems like programs inside has started, so let's quickly just jump right onto that.
So, Babung Vumbi, Chief Albert Luthuli's memorial lecture is one of the most important lectures we can have. It sets us apart from the rest when we take a moment to reflect on what justice means. So as a department, we continue to see the museum as a museum that constantly reminds us about the value of peace, but that there can be no peace where there is injustice. Where there is inequality, you can't have peace. So this value in particular is a value that Minister felt must be a message that where there is injustice, there can't be peace. And therefore this lecture reminds us to say, in pursuit of peace, there shall be justice for all in this country. Now, this museum is a museum that is in a very secluded area. But I think people of Crowdville have a lot to be grateful for, but most importantly, South Africans. It's a secluded area. It's an area that you can't see when you pass on the highway. It's not a museum that everybody can be able to say, I'm just turning in there. But its value, and this lecture reminds us, is that it brings about the essence of development in the rural communities, who deserves equal measure of progress and fruits of freedom that Chief Albert Luthuli lived for. So our appeal is that this lecture must constantly remind us of the people of Crowdville who also deserve quality of life that Dada Albert Luthuli lived for. His ideals are reminiscent of what we call, or we quote from one of the greatest fighters, freedom fighters, who once said, I would rather die for the idea that will live than to live for the idea that will die. Today, 50 years later, the ideals and the principles, the values of Chief Albert Luthuli continues to linger and live and lead us. Therefore, we commit again that we will work with the museum continuously every year as a department to make sure that these lectures continue, because they knock consciousness among ourselves to remember those who are still less privileged than us. I am honored, Honorable Chief Justice, that today I am here with you. You have been the voice, even when hope has been lost, about what justice should mean for the most rural and the most deprived. And we are very grateful to be associated with this annual lecture where you are present. And we are looking forward again to your voice of conscience for us to pursue justice. As a departing point, let me just say that selflessness, bravery are not things that sometimes you learn by going through school, but the conditions obtaining in your environment imbue you with those. And therefore, this lecture is about that selflessness where Chief Albert Luthuli, at the risk of losing chieftaincy, at the risk of being secluded from all others, he remained brave because he had a vision of an equal society, free of all injustices. And today we're enjoying those fruits. I wish you all the best during this annual lecture, and may his legacy live on to lead us until South Africa is really an equal society, free of poverty and unemployment, the things Chief Albert Luthuli fought for. I thank you.
Our thanks there to Mr. Vusimuzi Mkhize. Thank you very much indeed, Director General. And I think you said a few important words there, which came to mind. I mean, the legacy thing, and we'll hear that quite a lot. And every year it keeps coming up, just how important the things that he did were, and that we need to pick up from where he left and continue to finish the journey, as we were saying earlier. But you mentioned the people of Goutville, and I guess in many ways they gave us one of the greatest freedom fighters this country has ever seen. But it wasn't just the community that sacrificed in order for the greater good. It was also the family. And every time I see and meet Chief Albert Luthuli's second child and oldest daughter, I'm always very excited, because I think in meeting her and greeting her, I'm reminded about the sacrifice her family made, but also that Chief Albert Luthuli was a Pan-African at heart. And as someone from Zimbabwe, we claim him as ours because he was born in Bulawayo in Zimbabwe. But also I get excited when I hear the national anthem being sung, because at one stage, Nkosi Sikelel was the national anthem of Zimbabwe, Zambia, and South Africa. Very exciting thing that a lot of people don't realize. But it's my great pleasure now to ask Dr. Albertina Luthuli from the Luthuli family to offer a message of support. And she herself, I think, has given her life to service, much like her father, as a medical doctor, but also as a member of Parliament. So, of the KwaZulu-Natal Legislature and Parliament as well, the National Assembly. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Albertina Luthuli.
I greet you all this afternoon, and in particular, I must say that we're very honored and blessed to have the Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa present here. When I saw him on television yesterday, busy, I wondered if he'll make it to the lecture. So I'm really, really happy that he is here. And I acknowledge also the leaders of the ANC, the members, the leaders of other political formations present here, academics, combatants and friends, students, and everybody really who is here and those who are not here. Is acknowledged. And We appreciate very much the time you've taken to come and be with us, the family, in celebrating the, I think, 14th, something like that, lecture of my father. Now, if you're a family member, obviously, you talk with emotion. And therefore, I think it must be understood that I stand here before you very emotional, on a day like this, because we are dissecting and looking at the performance of a man who was not only a leader of the African National Congress at the time, but also he was a leader who looked beyond where he lived himself in South Africa. He looked in the continent of Africa and was acknowledged even internationally. I can say that, growing up in that environment sort of gave us, you couldn't escape. You just couldn't escape that, oh, the world goes beyond South Africa. We're suffering. Life was difficult, particularly for us black people and all the other people, who can be described under that category. But in fact, you really felt that you're not alone. It's not just South Africa, but it's the continent, as I've said. Perhaps some are suffering even more than us here. I don't know if you can measure suffering at all. Suffering is suffering. It's always 100%. But we grew up, in that environment, in the family, which always told you, there's a world beyond yourself. And I will say that it takes me to say that it is very important to recognize that at the heart of a healthy nation, there's got to be a healthy family. I think in sociological terms, they will say the family is the unit of a healthy society. Of course, families are different. You grow up in different ways, depending on parentage and the facilities that you are born, surrounding you and all that. But all the same, that is where, in fact, good guidance of any child is most important. We come from a background which necessarily did not take that into consideration. However, the consequences live with us, And we have to say now, how do we put all this into the context of having to make change, in the country that we live in? I think so far it has been mentioned that you need good leadership. Yeah. Now, change cannot just come from nowhere. You need a team, good leadership, and a team that is going to make sure that it fulfills the roles for which it is there and expected to fulfill. Now, it so happens that it's embarrassing, to talk about your own parents, It is, but it's not an easy task. But I will say that one thing is that my father was a leader of the people. He was a leader who looked beyond himself. He was a leader who faced the hardships of the times. And I think he leaned also very much on the faith. Faith, You must have something that, supports you, which is sort of like beyond yourself, It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it keeps you on the right track. He was a man of faith, and that sustained him very, very much, in difficult times. So was Mogoeng, my mother. You had a couple that really, you could say that the union was made in heaven. I think there's an expression like that. Because when it came to complementing, each other, it was a perfect union. One could do that in support of the other one. And then one knew that the other side is working in the same direction. And that really is very important when it comes to leadership. Yeah, it's very, very important indeed. That is why when he had to go to Oslo to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, he took his wife, my mother, along with him. And I think that even amongst the other nationalities, nobody really had done that before him. He acknowledged her and said that openly to the whole world, were it not for her, I wouldn't have achieved what I have achieved, So that is one thing also that I think we can talk of values, we can talk of, hardworking, integrity, and whatever, you see. But then again, that partnership is really, really, I think, historical, and it needs to be exemplary to a lot of us who experience difficulties, in that particular area. Now, also, we must appreciate, as family, that he was not alone. He had a good team around him. He had the Baba Sisulus. His deputy was President Oliver Reginald Tambo, a man very much of, strength and similar qualities to his leader, Luthuli. Yeah. And they merged. They were men who really sort of like the coin, one side of the other, and then the other side as well. So was the rest, of the team. Now, that's very important, because then it keeps things and the thinking on track. And it also means that it reduces, any sort of moving in different ways, in different directions. So when it comes to leadership, in short, I'm just expressing that because we are really at a time when, again here, we're looking at how do we put together the leaders that are going to take us into the future that we call a better future that people dream of. You know, when that future doesn't seem to be around the corner, they get nervous and unsteady and discouraged. Yeah. So we're looking forward to the 2019 and hope that God will bless us with that kind of leadership. Yeah. And I want to thank everybody who has made it here, because time is limited and it's important that there is enough time from the our Chief Justice, the keynote address, who is going to deliver it now and really this afternoon, and we are looking forward to that. We are merely supporting so that by the time he comes, at least it's warm. The house is warm and no longer cold. Thank you very much. The family, the Luthuli family as a whole, appreciates the time you've taken off, really, and that you've made us feel at home with you all this afternoon. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, on your behalf, can I just say thank you very much indeed to Dr. Albertina Luthuli, again, reminding us of the power of family and team, as epitomized particularly, I think, by the partnership of your father and your mother, and the leadership that they showed, and again, something that we should hold on to and grab with both hands. But we shouldn't forget yourself and your contribution. So our thanks to you, Dr. Albertina Luthuli and the Luthuli family. All right, so the moment has come for us to start getting ourselves ready for this year's memorial lecture. The Chief Justice is sitting in the front row and is about to deliver his message to us. And if you're watching at home and you've just tuned in, this is the 14th annual Chief Albert Luthuli Memorial Lecture, which is taking place here in KwaZulu-Natal at the Graduate School of Business and Leadership at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And the Chief Justice is our deliverer-in-chief today. But to introduce him, it's my great pleasure now to welcome the chairperson of the Luthuli Museum Council, Mr. Important Mkhize.
Yeah, we will adjust. Program Director, allow me to greet and acknowledge first and foremost all of those who are present here on this very important occasion. The Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa, the Luthuli family, the leaders of the ANC, its members and leaders of other political formations present here, academics, the Vice Chancellor, led by the Vice Chancellor, combatants and friends, students, once more, all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and all protocol observed. Program Director, thank you for giving me an opportunity to introduce a great man, Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa, Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng, who will be giving a keynote address about a great man, Chief Albert Luthuli, a man who is known and acknowledged by many as the gallant fighter and a leader of the African National Congress, a man who fought tirelessly and relentlessly for the freedom of this country. He cherished the vision, ideas, and ideals of a free, democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, prosperous, and a united South Africa, where justice is meted to all, and that is South Africa we live in today. His vision exists today in the Freedom Charter, in the strategy and tactic document of the ANC, and in the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, and many other writings. His embodiment exists in leaders like Nelson Mandela, Mama Albertina Sisulu, and many others. Now, coming to a man that will be delivering the keynote address, Chief Justice Mogoeng is the 4th Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa since the dawn of democracy. He was born in a small village called Mogatla Kofikral village in the northwest province of South Africa. He is married to Mapefo, and they were blessed with 3 children, Joanna, Mogetso, and Oteng. His education background, he holds the B. Juris and Bachelor of Law LLB degree from the University of Zululand and Natal, respectively. He is also hold a master's degree in Law LLB degree from the University of South Africa. In October 2013, the University of the Northwest awarded an honorary doctorate of law, LLD, to him. In March 2018, the University of Johannesburg also awarded Chief Justice with an honorary doctorate of law degree. His professional history, Mogoeng started his professional career as a temporary interpreter and was later appointed as High Court prosecutor from March 1986 to February 1990 in Mafeking. He did his pupillage at the Johannesburg Bar and practiced as an advocate at that bar from June 1990 until the end of 1991. He left to join the Mafeking Bar from January 1992 and later served as the deputy chairperson of the Bar Association until his elevation to the bench. In June 1997, he was appointed a judge of the Northwest High Court, and in April 2000, a judge of the Labour Appeal Court. In October 2000, he was then elevated to the position of Judge President of the Northwest High Court. Mogoeng was requested by fellow Judge President to serve as a member of the 5-member committee led by the then Chief Justice Pius Langa. That committee investigated racial and gender discrimination within the judiciary and proposed the necessary remedial action. He was appointed to the Constitutional Court of the Republic of South Africa in 2009 and subsequently elevated to the position of Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa on the 8th September 2011. In that capacity, he leads both the Constitutional Court and the Judiciary. He is also chair the Judicial Service Commission, JSC, South African Judicial Education Institute, Council, National Efficiency Enhancement Committee. In April 2017, Chief Justice Mogoeng was elected as president of the Conference of Constitutional Jurisdiction of Africa for a period of 2 years. In August 2017, the Chief Justice was also appointed a Chancellor by the Council of the University of KwaZulu-Natal for a period of 4 years. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That is the synopsis of what the keynote speaker, the characteristic of his education career. We have a man in front of us here that has been appointed for the task that he is going to perform right now. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Before I begin with the acknowledgements, let me say I was instructed by the university officials to rather use this podium. It's not out of fear of anything. Please be seated. Program Director, Mr. Peter Ndoro, and the Chair of the Museum Council, Mr. Important Mkize, Dr. Albertina Luthuli and Mrs. Jane Wabaza, and the rest of the Luthuli family, Deputy Vice Chancellor of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Professor Albert Mari. I dare not forget my dear wife, Mapefo. The Director General of the Department of Arts and Culture, Mr. Busimo Simkize, Chairperson of the Luthuli Foundation, Mr. Mtunzi Luthuli, the Luthuli Museum Members of Council, members of the UKZN Council, members of the Executive Management, UKZN, Deans, Academics and Staff, students, alumni, captains of industry, members of the Groundville community, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all. Maybe just to veer off the script first and say, as Dr. Albertina Luthuli was speaking, I was reminded of the profound inspiration that Chief Albert Luthuli was to me during the formative years of my political life as a student at the University of Zululand. At times we used a route that allowed us to pass by his residence. And students would shout and say, "That is Chief Albert Luthuli's residence." Something would simply be fired up into my spirit. I wouldn't make sense of it. And subsequently, I got hold of his book while I was still a student, Let My People Go. I just don't know how many of us really appreciates the profundity of the topic alone, the heading alone, Let My People Go, and the perspective from which this man of God was coming, because it's fundamentally about the story of the children of Israel who experienced a lot of persecution and suffering at a time in Egypt, and the continued struggle for freedom that they embarked upon. And a message kept on being sent to their captors to say, let my people go. And of critical importance, before I even read out my message, is this: that when they left, it was not just the equivalent of political freedom, the possibility to vote your leaders into office, because that is always inadequate freedom. They left with treasure. There was credible economic empowerment that went along with their freedom. So we dare not assume that we are free as African people throughout the continent of Africa, as long as all we have is the possibility to elect into office those that we prefer. Because strictly speaking, you would rather have abundance of food and land and the necessary technical know-how on working on the land, to be wealthy, to be productive, and be of help to the less privileged, than simply have the right to vote. So that must be remembered. I've been made to understand that the objective of the Chief Albert Luthuli Memorial Lecture is to promote the principles and values that he stood for and upheld, like peace, human rights, justice, and the harmonious coexistence of people regardless of race, color, and creed. And the theme of this year, as the program director has informed us, is all about the challenges that face the African continent, especially the ownership of land and its use. Some reflections on what is to be done to secure a future where peace and shared prosperity will reign in the African continent is what I was called upon to do. We all know that Chief Albert Luthuli was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize because of his unwavering commitment to the resolution of challenges, however taxing, frustrating by peaceful means. To address challenges relating to land use and land ownership in Africa, the solutions we propose in his memory must be inclusive, geared at securing enduring peace, stability, and shared prosperity. But our starting point in that journey ought to be a connection with the views on land and the relationship between landlessness and poverty and homelessness. Chief Albert Luthuli said, and I quote, "These rights could and should be extended to all people in an integrated society for each to use voluntarily according to his inclination and capabilities. Apartheid in the reserves will not give the people more land, and yet scarcity of land is one of the paramount needs," close quote. African people needed more land back in the 50s already, and land was one of their paramount needs. That was 50 years ago. Where are we in South Africa and elsewhere in the African continent? It is a matter that should not be romanticized. It is a matter that must be addressed frontally, but without dividing the South African nation. Good people, we've been divided for far too long. And much of the suffering that we have been experiencing and continue to experience is because we lay more emphasis on what divides us than seek to focus on the many things we share in common, zoom in on them with a view to channeling our energies and collective wisdom towards finding a solution that can unite us, reconcile us, so that we can march forward to shared prosperity. The Nobel laureate also said, open quotes, "You will agree that the masses of the African people live in abject poverty in both rural and urban areas, and so many Africans find themselves landless and homeless, close quote. Highlighting the need to soldier on until this inhuman treatment of the African people in their ancestral land is reversed, Chief Albert Luthuli observed, open quotes, since union, we have witnessed a decided deterioration in making available to African people opportunities for full development. Must we fold our hands in despair when we see our people drift to ultimate impotence and perpetual slavery? God forbid that we should be so untrue to Africa and the cause of freedom, close quote. Chief Albert Luthuli's philosophy of freedom, land ownership, and poverty eradication transcended the borders of South Africa. It was truly Pan-Africanist in character. It is therefore not surprising that the theme for this year is geared at securing lasting solutions in relation to land ownership and land use for the entire African continent. Modern-day South Africans should similarly be consumed by the desire to land solutions for the entire African continent. This is so for at least two interrelated reasons. In the preamble to our Constitution, we pray, typical of the spirit of the man of God, Chief Albert Luthuli, open quotes, Nkosi sikelela i-Afrika. Mudzimu tatudzetsa Africa. Hosi katekisa Africa. We also sing Nkosi sikelela i-Afrika in our national anthem. So it has always been and should always be about the entire African continent. We have thus committed ourselves to the well-being of the African continent. It is therefore fitting that we pour our energies and collective wisdom in endeavors that would result in sensible, humane, and just land ownership patterns, sustainable and beneficial land use by all, shared prosperity, and enduring peace. The major challenge that confronted almost all African countries is the land issue. In fact, one would not be exaggerating to say that the land issue was that the struggle was primarily about the dispossession of African people of their land. Gross injustices took place in relation to the land issue. As Chief Albert Luthuli put it, open quotes, one cannot separate the issue of race from the argument about ownership at present, because one race insists on exclusive ownership, close quote. He went on to say, open quotes, with the exception of a small number of voices crying in the wilderness, the overwhelming majority of whites reply that South Africa is exclusively owned by 3 million whites. It does not stop either with ownership of land and wealth and participation in government. In this view, whites, because they are whites, extend their possession of ownership of the remaining 11 million people who are expected to regard themselves as fortunate to be allowed to live and breathe and work in a white man's country, close quote. This position obtained in virtually all African countries. As a result, land and wealth ownership in Africa is overwhelmingly in the hands of our former colonizers or their descendants. This would explain why genuine peace, talk less of shared prosperity, is hard to come by in Africa. The natives of Africa are largely landless, poor, marginalized, ignored, and at times even despised by those whose ancestry, through unjust and indefensible means, acquired their land. In honor of the memory of Nkosi Albert Luthuli, we must resolve this historic challenge, this monumental injustice, this abuse of the fundamental human rights of the African people. Mr. Lauren Cunningham first gave a moving description of the breathtaking beauty of the African landscape, rivers, lakes, animals, mountains, waterfalls, and then said, open quote, "Our great artist God has displayed these and other wonders in Africa. What are his plans for this continent and this people? He hid more gold here, more diamonds, plutonium, and copper than in any other place on earth. Africa has enough arable land to feed a large portion of the earth. The continent has more hydroelectric potential than all the rest of the world put together, as well as abundance of coal and oil. Wisely used by and for Africans, the continent's resources could contribute significantly to new health and prosperity. Unfortunately, for too long, Africa's people have been enslaved, raped, abused, dismissed by prejudice, hatred, or just ignored. Their rich resources have often been collected and used by others, even stolen, with little, if any, benefit going to the Africans. Instead, their value has attracted foreign exploitations, enriching dictators and warlords, bringing bloodshed, starvation, and even modern forms of black-on-black slavery, close quote. Within an African context, it then makes a lot of sense to conclude that land ownership accompanied by properly guided and funded diligent usage equals wealth ownership. Africa is rich in minerals, fertile soil, rivers with abundant water, a wide variety of much treasured game, vast tracts of land, and unrivaled electricity generating potential. How then are we to resolve the ownership and utilization of land? Chief Albert Luthuli was convinced about the potency of peaceful means as a weapon to resolve challenges that appear to be intractable. African people must wake up to the reality that the objectives the likes of Chief Albert Luthuli struggled and died pursuing are far from being realized. Some of the peaceful strategies effectively employed to wage the liberation struggle should not have been abandoned when the right to vote and occupy high government positions was realized. An earnest pursuit of the peaceful resolution of the land and economic issues should have been embarked upon. Concomitantly, there must now begin to be a worldwide united campaign to conscientize the global community about the injustice and devastating effect of the landlessness and virtual exclusion of the African people from meaningful participation in the mainstream of economies in Africa. The exploitation, collection, and exclusive enjoyment of Africa's wealth by all but Africans must also be campaigned against. The Free Nelson Mandela campaign and other similar advocacies must be seriously pursued until it becomes apparent that poverty eradication, restoration of good health and longevity, peace, stability, sustainable economic development and growth in Africa, and shared prosperity will never materialize as long as the economic justice-oriented fundamentals are not put in place. War is not an option. Strategies that militate against peace and stability are also not an option. But silence and inaction in the face of life-threatening and dehumanizing migration, abject poverty and landlessness are also not an option. As Chief Albert Luthuli would have done, African people must pursue meaningful, purposeful, and truly intentional dialogue with those who own land and the sworn defenders of the status quo. Internal and global campaigns must also be waged concertedly and tirelessly until normalcy is returned to. Let me pause here and make some remarks. You know, I have observed that there are some of us who are traversing the globe, seeking to conscientize the global community about why it is supposed to be good and acceptable that the status quo in relation to land ownership and the ownership of the wealth of South Africa ought to be maintained. But here lies the question: where are the victims of landlessness and exclusion from meaningful participation in the mainstream economy? Where is their voice? As I said, war is not an option. Finger pointing is also not an option. I've spent quite a bit of time engaging with African people and our white compatriots about the critical challenges that confront this nation, and that is the land, racism, and exclusion from meaningful participation in the economy. Initially, there was resistance, but as soon as you demonstrate, and people can easily connect with a genuine heart, as soon as you demonstrate convincingly that, as a matter of fact, it's for the common good of all of us, that we vigorously pursue enduring peace and stability founded on the truth in order to resolve the land issue, the economic issue, and the race issue, people's eyes then begin to open up and they warm up to the possibility of jointly pursuing and finding a solution. Let me make my point. I don't think I was the only one who thought that the release or proposed release of Nelson Mandela and other freedom fighters by President de Klerk was a ruse. I think there were many others who thought it's a lie. He wants them in so that they can destroy them, while they have lowered their guard. And when the right-wingers invaded the venue where negotiations were held, I said, I knew it, and I don't think I was the only one. When Buipatong happened, and when Chris Hani was assassinated, I said, that's it. When President Nelson Mandela and President de Klerk squared up at the venue of the negotiations, critical to our peaceful future, I said, that's it too. As a Nigerian who said, that's it too. So I gave up, and I don't think I was the only one. Lo and behold, we underestimated the resilience of black and white South Africans in pursuit of a just cause. We underestimated the potency of the philosophy of Chief Albert Luthuli, that ineffective, harmless as a peaceful campaign might appear to be, it actually is the only recipe for enduring peace, stability, and shared prosperity. The difficulty has been, we have for far too long been tap dancing around the truth. We didn't want to rock the boat. It is about time that we appreciate the principles that drove Chief Albert Luthuli. Tell the truth, however painful it may be. But it's not forever. It will itch you for now, and the itching will disappear after a while. Don't mislead one another
I'm open to my white compatriots because I love them, genuinely, whether they believe it or not. But I'm not going to say to them that there is no racism in South Africa. There is. Otherwise, the previously excluded from the mainstream economy would, after 24 years, be captains of industries in their numbers. Why is it? Why is it that young white compatriots who, at the dawn of democracy, were not big players in the economy, now they are big players, and seasoned economists or entrepreneurs who were previously excluded are still out there in the cold? There is subconscious racism that keeps them out, and we've got to confront that. We need intellectuals to pour out their intellectual gifts with a view to finding a solution to this challenge, both black and white. You see, let it not be us and them. There are many genuine white people out there, many. There are many committed black people out there, not those who are just looking for making a lot of money, because some black people are not committed to the plight of the poor. All they are interested in is how to make more money. That is why Africa is not moving. Everybody knows all the right-sounding noises to make for the sake of getting support from the people, when in fact they are just fooling them. Let them occupy that office. It's all about them. It's all about their hidden masters or handlers. Nothing about the public. So it's time for us to get real, confront and tell the truth without being hostile to any section of the South African population. So I've gone out of the reading now. Let me just speak. You know, I have many times over in this country been asked by black people and white people separately or together to come and address them on anything concerning land ownership, participation in the economy, racism, ethical leadership, unity and reconciliation. But there is a particularly striking meeting that took place in Paris. I think it was on the 30th of August or something. I was asked by the South African Brahman Farmers Society to come and address them. It was taxing because I had just been to Cape Town to address one meeting. I had to fly to Johannesburg, immediately jump into a car and go to Paris. There were about 1,000 farmers there. But before I could speak, there was a white brother from Namibia, Mr. Rhino van der Merwe. He is the president of the Brahman Farmers Association in Namibia. So he spoke just before me. And this is what he said. He said, I'm paraphrasing, but that's the essence is there. He said, my white brothers, let me tell you, we became landowners because injustice made it possible for us to be landowners. He said, you know that we did not come with land here. It is the people were generous to accommodate us, and we were not happy with the little, with what they had given us. We wanted to take all, even what was in their possession. Now that we live in a democratic order, the time has come for us to sacrifice. He said, if we are not willing to sacrifice in order to address both the land and the economic issue, there will never be peace, because it is unjust to continue that way. Oh, Rhino had opened the door for me. And happily, typical of the Chief Albert Luthuli's spirit, they opened the meeting with prayer. So I drew a Bible verse to lay the foundation about loving God and loving your brother or sister as you love yourself. Meaning, if you think it is good for you to have a farm, reflect on why your other brothers and sisters who happen to be black don't have farms. What happened? Is it just and sustainable for the indigents of the land to continue to be landless, to continue to be poor and actually die of poverty, to be exclusively associated with gardening and working in the house, to be exclusively associated with having shacks as their accommodation? Let's stop tap dancing around the truth. Many people don't like the truth, and they attack me for that. Do you think I care? So, let's connect with reality, and the reality is land was taken from African people. We've got, just as we were able to solve the apartheid governance out of existence through a negotiated process, I'm confident, considering the hurdles that we had to pass through as a nation, black and white, that if we really commit ourselves to addressing this issue, we will. We are a gifted people. We are wise people. Look at our country. There are very few countries that can compare to South Africa. We are smart people. We are generous people. We are kind people. But we have allowed ourselves to be dragged this or the other way. What a pity that we too have fallen victim of what researchers have discovered, which is 87% of the people just accept as gospel truth anything that is posted either in a social media platform, in the newspaper, or anything of the sort. Whether it is true or not, there is no effort to check whether this is true or a lie. If they say Mogoeng has robbed a bank, they say, oh, we didn't know he's a criminal. No research, nothing. Let us stop outsourcing our thinking and analytical responsibilities. Let us think things through. You are the leaders that this nation and posterity needs to address the challenges that confront this nation. What a shame it will be when your great-grandchildren wake up to realize that once upon a time there was Chief Albert Luthuli, who sacrificed all, including the convenience of his family, who was killed under mysterious circumstances. Even now, we don't know what killed him. So that you and I can become Chief Justice, professors, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Director General, Captain of Industry. And once we got to that point, we thought, well, it's Uhuru now. The struggle is over. Even when you are confronted by the reality of abject poverty on a daily basis, you wouldn't care less. Yours is all about self-preservation. All you do is to check, okay, does the media like people who tell the truth? Or must I just say Gupta and then I'll be covered? Will they cover me even when I confront the realities, the painful realities of a South African and African society? Forget about media coverage. We are not here for the media. If they cover you, it is okay. If they don't want to cover you, it is the hearts and the minds that you must reach out to. One person, just one person, like Mother Teresa or Martin Luther King, in whom you plant a good seed, will spread that good message. Before you know it, the whole nation, the whole continent is focused on what matters the most. How else did the liberation struggle survive? Did they own media houses? Did they have Twitter? Did they have Facebook? It was one person talking to another, and the message spread in that fashion. Before we knew it, you had your Black Consciousness movement, with the advent of the banning of the major liberation organizations, you had trade union movements, you had UDF, you had all sorts of organizations that fought for the freedom that we are now basking on as if there is no tomorrow. Now, to achieve all of the above requires selfless and true servant leadership that is not imprisoned by greed and a never satisfied appetite for money and material possessions. Smooth modern day dictators who pretend to care about the people when it is really themselves that they serve must be seen through and rejected. That way, workable solutions to land ownership and mutually beneficial and sustainable land use, as well as shared prosperity, would become a realizable dream. Tangible evidence will begin to emerge, but only if you have a Luthuli type of leadership style in Africa. Let us each play our part in our own circles of influence, pursuing national unity and reconciliation without sacrificing the urgent need to take African people out of landlessness, homelessness, sickness, and abject poverty. Properly contextualized, we ought to sacrificially say, as Chief Luthuli did, open quote, "This stand of mine, which resulted in my being sacked from the chieftainship, might seem foolish and disappointing to some liberal and moderate Europeans and non-Europeans with whom I have worked these many years, and with whom I still hope to work. This is no parting of ways, but a launching further into the deep." That's a deep spiritual revelation. I invite them to join us in our unequivocal pronouncement of all legitimate African aspirations and in our firm stand against injustice and oppression, close quote. Investors must be made to honor their social responsibility contracts. Never again must the African soil and its resources be exploited with the connivance of greedy African leaders who occupy positions of responsibility in return only for a few classrooms and boreholes. A genuine win-win investment is what Africa needs and deserves in return for the exploitation of its minerals, other natural resources, and labor force. The positive and tangible impact of investment on the lives of our people is what we must all insist on. There must be transparency on the terms and conditions of investment, and they must be openly published or reported on, particularly in relation to how investments plow back into the land-owning rural communities or the state. Tax evasion, harmful and predatory business practices must be fought most vigorously to end both public and private sector corruption. Our environment is our future. The African forestry and the big five, especially rhinos and elephants, have been targeted by greed. Our rivers have been polluted to the detriment of our health and future in the name of job creation and economic growth. Look at climate change or climate warming that have given birth to things we could never have thought of, like Hurricane Michael. Enough is enough. Injustice is unsustainable. And in recognition of this reality, our pursuit of peace and justice must not be grounded on a false or shaky foundation. We must first internalize the truth outlined in the preamble to our Constitution and the aspiration we have all committed ourselves to realize these objectives. The quality of life of all citizens and the potential of each person. I beg your pardon. The quality of all citizens must be improved, and the potential of each person must be freed by the envisaged land ownership patterns and the transparent and responsible manner in which we allow it to be used. Greed and heartless disregard for the centuries-old disgraceful plight of the poor African masses must not be allowed to be sustained by nice-sounding and clever business lingo any longer. I thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, on your behalf, I'd like to thank the Chief Justice for sharing with us a really, really powerful message. And can I remind you that you can be very much a part of this conversation, and all you need to do is look inside your packs. There's a piece of paper in there, a space for you to write your question. Write your questions now. Our ushers will collect them from you as you pass them towards the end of each row. We will then, whilst all of this is happening, can the choir come to the front so that... I'm not sure the microphone or something is... All right. So can the choir come to the front? But if we could just get those questions through, we'll collect them from you and we'll get through as many as possible. There's a little card inside your pack. You'll find a card in your pack. Just write your question on there, and we'll get through as many as possible. And if you're watching this at home and you want to participate, I'll try and monitor on social media as well. Hashtag Luthuli Lecture, hashtag Luthuli Lecture, as well as hashtag Luthuli Remembered. All right, so whilst you do that, let's enjoy very briefly, once again, the music of the Stanger Hospital Choir. That's the Stanger Hospital Choir, and we wish them the very best of luck as they participate in the provincial choral competition. They've won in their district already, so we wait to see how well they do. All right, so Chief Justice, thanks very much indeed. And don't forget, please write your questions and also forward them to hashtag Luthuli Lecture, hashtag Luthuli Remembered. I'll pick them up from there and we'll put those questions to the Chief Justice. I'm not quite sure where to start. Throughout, you said so many powerful things. And I suppose let's go to the beginning, because you started by reminding us of when you were first inspired by Chief Albert Luthuli and his book, in particular his work. And I just wonder if he was here now and he had an opportunity to address leaders either in the National Assembly or at the African Union, especially around this big issue, which is land, what might he have said, do you think, from your understanding of him?
Well, I think his starting point.
Yeah. That's fine.
I think his starting point would probably have been to pay special attention to the quality of leadership we have in the African continent. Because I challenge anybody who is least concerned about the quality of leadership that we have in this continent to find a way to attend the summit of the African head of state at any given time and just make a careful observation of what happens there. Two, there are far too many burning issues, critical issues, that one would have thought would have enjoyed priority to address, but there doesn't seem to be much action or decisiveness there. So given the sacrificial leadership that he lived out, together with his comrades, the likes of Oliver Tambo, Nelson Mandela, I believe that he would have invested quite a lot of time in ensuring that he's understood even when he advises, and the willpower to do the right thing is there. So you basically need to understand the reasons why, all the major reasons why Africa is not moving forward, because there are big issues there. You also need to understand the dynamics of aid and sponsorship. Why is it that there was so much anger generated by a decision by the African leaders to fund their own programs? Of what benefit is it, and to who, that this rich continent must continue to be dependent on others that have far less mineral resources and less fertile soil than we do? Why do people get very angry when you say, we need to look after ourselves? And this funding that is being pushed so vigorously by those who are in the habit of lending money to Africa, why is it ever so necessary to attach politically oriented conditionalities to the loans and even prescribe how the money that is going to be lent to you is to be used, and who actually ultimately gets to benefit from the contracts that are awarded out of these loans? Is it the people of that country, or is it always foreigners? These are serious issues that must be confronted, and they are dangerous, by the way. But they are questions that must be confronted. Until we address those questions frontally, until you have the likes of Kwame Nkrumah who adopts the attitude, or Patrice Lumumba who adopts the attitude that, look, if you guys want to kill me, but I'm going to pursue this just cause. Forget about anything meaningful happening in Africa. So I think his focus would have been on identifying and developing leaders.
Just carry on. It's pick up already. There we go.
On developing leaders who understand that the struggle is not over and therefore the need for selflessness has never ended. I think that's where the focus would have been, because once you have a critical mass of African leaders who are committed genuinely to improving the quality of life of the people, then we can begin to talk about implementation.
All right, so I'm mindful we've got a lot of questions to get through here, so I'm only going to ask one more myself, and then the rest I'll give back to the people. So I'm not sure if you've had a chance to sit back, apply your mind. In Zimbabwe, I'll use that as an example, where the people got frustrated and they went to the president and said, listen, we fought for this country, we want the land. And he said, go and take it.
Yes.
And they did. They went and took
Sure.
it. But it had its consequences.
Sure.
You are someone who understands the law and justice and fairness. And I wonder if you've sat down and thought to yourself, what might be the best way to deal with this land issue that's fair? Is it state ownership? Is it community ownership using chiefs? Is it individual ownership? Do we go back to our traditional ways, or do we pick up these title deeds that were taught to us by our colonial invaders? Have you ever thought, what might we do?
Yes. Well, I'll only say this much because many people think that I don't know what to say in order not to find myself forced to recuse myself when land-related issues come to, but I know what to say. Look, let me just express a view on what I think South Africans and African people, black and white, ought to be focusing on. You see, if we allow ourselves to be guided by Chief Albert Luthuli's principles and values, what you need to say is, whatever we do, we've got to have a very sharp focus on peace, justice, equality, equal opportunities, and shared prosperity. But very much in line with the preamble to our Constitution, never forget that the serious challenges that South Africa and the rest of the African continent confronts are as a result of injustice. So, what then is it that you must do to make sure that in line with our Constitution, the preamble that says, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united by our diversity, you achieve an outcome that recognizes that without preferring one grouping to another. You see, one of the major challenges have been out of fear of sounding anti-white, out of fear of looking like you want to drive our white compatriots out. You mustn't, without being emotional, say, the manner in which our white compatriots acquired land is not right. Our white compatriots come. Let's confront this issue. You know what happened. It's all over history. It's all over the laws. So the solution that will help us to address these issues without compromising on peace, national unity, reconciliation, and justice is the one that flows out of negotiations. You know, sometimes you reject things because your orientation, your background has not allowed you to see the other side. If, for instance, earlier in our democracy, you attended what they call social context or sensitivity training programs, and you heard what black people had to say about people of Indian descent, what they had to say about white people, and vice versa, you'd realize where the problem lies. So in a nutshell, we've got to agree as black and white people that white people can't keep all the land the way they do. Some of them own vast tracts of land. They can afford to sell them back to the state at a reduced price. I keep reminding South Africans that with the dawn of democracy, a 3-bedroomed house in an average town like a small Mafikeng where I come from was more expensive than a farm that is 1,000 hectares in extent. Suddenly, prices shot up. So because we all want to avoid danger, we all want to avoid a conflagration, we all appreciate that South Africans fought each other because of the land issue, the economic issue, and the race issue, and we don't want to go back there. We don't want people to say, but what were we fighting for? Where is it? You don't want people to remember that there is something outstanding. Let's just join hands and confront this problem and negotiate.
And that was Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng speaking at Chief Albert Luthuli lecture. We'll bring you more on that as and when it becomes available. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll bring you more news.
Hanover Park is known to be a playground for gang members. Several pupils failed to attend classes.
Come before your court at some point. But let's go straight to the questions from the floor now. And what I'm going to ask you to do, we're going to try and do speed dating here, where we answer the questions as quickly as possible. The first one says, when will you come and address us in our townships, like Inanda, Kwamashu, Umlazi? You seem to be far from the grassroots people.
Well, you know, every Sunday I pastor a church in a very small village known as Lonely Park in Mafikeng. I move around people who live in shacks almost every weekend. So I live with the grassroots. I walk around farmers and people who herd animals. The only challenge is we have far too many villages and townships. If I were going to go to 1111, I'll never cover you all. But if people were to organize themselves as a number of townships or villages, that one would be doable.
Okay. Now, given the state, given the state of inequality, poverty, and unemployment, do you think that the expropriation of land without compensation will address wealth and disposition? This is from Linda.
That one will come to court.
The new Ethiopian government declared to structure the existing rotten judicial system. For this restructuring, where do they start from? Can you advise? Your advice will be greatly appreciated. So perhaps this is someone from Ethiopia.
When there was there were serious allegations, widespread allegations about corruption in the Kenyan judiciary, a decision was taken to interview all the judges and magistrates all over again, and some of our judges, like Albi Sachs, went there. And now you have a new judiciary after that process, and maybe that is the example that Ethiopia would like to follow.
How can we be optimistic in the face of rampant corruption by our elected leaders?
You know, aren't we the ones who vote leaders into positions of power? I think part of what going forward must be seriously considered, and I'm not a politician, I'm just speaking as a South African, is this. Do we subject those who end up occupying serious positions of leadership into any testing mechanism? I might have been thought to be joking in Cape Town addressing this issue, but I wasn't. I said, why is it that I was interviewed for 2 days for the position I occupy, and others just come, you speak to a stadium, you speak to a hall, nobody's asking you any question, you go away? I think the time must come when people speak and then you say, sit down, let's put questions to you. because some of you might even know that leader better. If there is any wrongdoing in his or her life, you are able to say, but you are the one who stole so and so's goat. You can't lead us now. Test the capacity. Test the track record. Remind them of the positions they used to occupy in the past and ask them, what did you do when you were there? That will help a great deal, especially if those engagements are televised, to at least reduce the level of corrupt elements from our governance system.
Do you think that we should change the way we elect our presidents, that we vote for a person and not a party in particular?
I will only go so far as to say it's one of the credible options that we probably have to consider as a nation.
Okay. Chief Justice, what are the key values both the white and black progressive and patriotic professionals, entrepreneurs, academics and intellectuals must emulate from Nkosi Albert Luthuli in advancing the course of socio-economic justice in South Africa?
I think those values we were all brought up with. The only challenge is some at a tender age were corrupted to believe that it is only people of a particular pigmentation that you must live out those values to. Ubuntu is fundamental. Generosity and selflessness is a value that we all grow up with until somebody tells you, no, don't exhibit it to this one, exhibit it to that one. We all know those values. I think we must be vocal about them, teach them at kindergarten, primary school, and so on, and have programs designed to root out bias and racism out of the psyche of children and adults. So we are not doing enough to address issues of corruption and discrimination. But peace, justice, equality, all those values of Chief Albert Luthuli we must emulate, but our parents teach us those things until it gets to who you should favor, who should not favor. You must disrespect people just because they are women and all those things.
All right, so Chief Justice, you are our Chancellor, and that's something that people may not know, that you're the Chancellor of the University of KwaZulu-Natal. A student from here, Busisiwe Shezi, says, what lessons have you learned over your career you wish you would have learned at the stage we're in as students now? So if you were a student at UKZN, as they are now, what lessons would you wish have learned at this stage?
Well, I wish I had learned about saving money. That there's a problem. We really have departed from the principles that informed our parents' way of life. My parents would never buy anything that they did not have money for. They were disciplined and never wanted to flaunt the little money they have. Now, there is an animal known as conspicuous consumption that has captured the psyche, particularly of the African people. Once a person starts working, even if he or she does not have where to live, even if he or she lives in a shack, the first thing is to buy a BMW 3 Series or a Mercedes C-Class, and to go to town where people are many and be opening doors many times so that people can see that he or she is the owner of a car. A car is not an investment. I didn't know that. When I started working, I had 4 vehicles at any given time.
Wow.
And I would open the garages so that passers-by can... Stupid! So, saving.
Okay, Chief Justice, in a situation, this is an interesting question. In a situation where, and this is from Lwazim Tembu, he says, in a situation where you are presiding on a matter before the court and the legal principles applicable to the matter are not pro-African or favor transformation, how do you judge?
Well, I don't know if that is possible because our constitution is pro-transformation, it's pro-justice, equity, and fairness. So no law stands a chance of surviving because we judge every law with reference to the constitution. So the mirror is the constitution. If any law doesn't allow us to achieve this, we strike it down. We declare it constitutionally invalid. So that possibility doesn't exist.
Okay. From the Gratville Mission, Ndabe Ntle says, why is it that white people still own stolen land and claim it as their own? Isn't owning something that's not yours illegal?
Well, you know, it's a very difficult question, isn't it? Because you'll be confronted with two answers. Others will say, you know what, when I got born, my father did not even own any farm. I bought it from some other person who was selling it. So I would urge that, you know, let us not accuse each other, but let's confront reality. Whether a white compatriot's father owned a farm or not, the bottom line is the economic benefits that they had access to and black people did not have access to enabled them to buy farms. And two, once upon a time, black people were not even allowed to buy land, even if they had money. So rather go back to the discrimination and the benefits that it availed our white compatriots, confront all of us, particularly even our white compatriots, and said, you benefited from an unjust system. Let's spend our energies on finding ways to address this injustice. I think that one will yield a more productive engagement and the likelihood of finding a mutually satisfactory solution are even more enhanced, or would be more enhanced.
Okay, somebody wants another bite at the cherry of this question I also kind of touched on. Chief Justice spoke at length on the importance of land tenure. This is Mohammed who's asking. The VC spoke about chieftainship as embodied by Nkosi Albert Luthuli. So, how would the Constitutional Court balance these individual versus tribal ownership of land if it is the constitutionality of the tribal ownership of land is further challenged? Ingonyama Trust is raised in as example.
Well, I will not talk about Ingonyama Trust. The last time I heard some money was being gathered so that they could litigate or something, so I wouldn't go there. But I want to say this. You know, properly practiced, there really isn't anything wrong with communal land ownership. If you apply the original African land ownership principles, there's nothing wrong with that system. Because what it means is basically this. Although the traditional leader and those who assist him or her have power over the allocation of land, that land doesn't belong to them. They hold the land on behalf of the community. If they are not handling it properly, the community can kick them out. So it was never meant to be anybody's personal possession that they can do as they please with it. No, that's not African traditional system of land ownership. So all I can say is let's practice it the way our ancestors did. That is the safest way.
Okay. Thank you, Chief Justice. In your presentation, you referred to blacks and whites. Kindly acknowledge the role of Indians and their contributions to the economy as well.
You know, I had a lot luck of Indian descent. We don't pay for them. He was a foreigner from London. And the other day he was saying, we were with the body of clerks, he says, you know, the black people said this to me. I said, Umka, I'm a white man compared to you. I said, your blackness is almost the same as my shoe. Now you are telling me I'm a black person. What are you? He says I'm an Indian. I said, but coming to blackness, are you not a black person? Because even during the black consciousness era, when we said black, it was a generic term. We were talking about the colors, First Nation people, African people, and Indians. So this notion that Indian people are not black people, I don't understand. Where is our photographer? I'm sorry. No, the other one. The one who gave me the mic. Yes, that man, look at him. He was talking to the sister there earlier, the one, stand up my sister. I need to make a point. You, stand up. They had an argument where in my holding room, and he said, you are talking this about me because I'm a black Indian. So the man acknowledges his blackness. We are all black people.
Okay. Carl Heinz Ace says, how can we improve the rule of law in our society as we acknowledge that our moral values are degrading on a daily basis?
Well, let's go back to the fundamentals. Let every parent raise their own children as they were raised. Because I grew up in a village and I was taught to respect every human being. I was taught that every elder is my father, is my mother. I was taught that any elder, when I see, I must show respect. If they send me to the shops or wherever, I must run. I mustn't ask questions. I was taught that every elder has the power and the entitlement to discipline me. So we have abandoned our values. That's our problem. Let's teach our children, our grandchildren, what it takes to become a good citizen. At home, at places of worship, kindergartens, primary, all the way up. Let's recapture our values that explain why, notwithstanding poverty, some of us could just wiggle our way through the challenges rather than go for crime. Because absent those values, there will be criminals, there will be all sorts of people beating up elders and raping our grandparents because the values have not been instilled in them. Let's go back to the fundamentals.
Okay, so this sounds like a young person because I hear this kind of language quite a bit. Poverty as black South Africans is our daily bread due to the suffering of our parents during the time of apartheid. How do we claim our assets from the present time colonizers without the use of violence, since they don't understand the language of peace and calmly asking?
We have examples all around us, and please don't misunderstand me as subscribing to what is evil about the examples that I'm going to cite. Once upon a time, the Afrikaner people were oppressed by the British people in this country. What did they do? They didn't despair. They established what I call think tanks, and that's what I go about encouraging people to do. Thinkers, wherever they are, would come together, come up with strategies, whether they related to land, farming, economy, the area of banking, education, anything of consequence. And those ideas would then be collated at some stage and debated. And people with the critical capacity to implement would then be given the responsibility to implement these things on a progressive basis and in the spirit of togetherness. So far, sonke. They then began to implement. Before we knew it, Afrikaners were serious players in the economy and they even took over government. Let us do a lot of thinking and strategizing. This self-hate that makes it impossible for black people to form one big medical firm, one big accounting firm, one big attorney's firm must come to an end. When a little bit of money comes, the company crumbles. Let us reconnect with the principles that facilitates progress. Once we do that, we will be able not only to identify where the real problems are, but how to overcome them. We can then begin to engage on a serious dialogue. The lamentations of what happened before alone are not enough to see us through to what I believe Chief Albert Luthuli called the land of milk and honey, the promised land. There is a lot of thinking on a daily basis and strategizing that we must each do towards that objective.
All right. Sideko Rakolote on Twitter says, what is your view on religion, politics, and law?
Well, there is no, in my view, I know the views of others. There is no conflict, by the way. Because religion will say, don't kill. Which law wants you to kill? Religion will say, don't steal. Which politics or law wants you to steal? So it will say, be generous and help the poor. Why should we not help the poor? Why should we be selfish? It will say the love of money is dangerous, meaning greed is dangerous. Why should we be greedy? It's good to be successful, but without disadvantaging others. So I'm one of those who believe that these things properly understood can actually coexist, because it is the best in each that you look for, so that whatever you do can redound to the common good of all the people.
Okay. Ryan Tato on Twitter says, do you believe that white South Africans share the similar economical perspective as black South Africans?
What we must never do is overgeneralize. Remember, during the liberation struggle, there are white people like Webster, Bram Fisher, Joe Slovo, and a number of others who were willing to die for the common objective of seeing a free South Africa. My colleague Albie Sachs doesn't have one of his hands, a white man, a Jew, who wanted South Africa, a free South Africa, to eventuate. So I'm saying, and it's interesting coming from me because I spent my time as a proponent of black consciousness, and I'm still there in a sense. I'm saying there are many good white people out there who are willing to contribute to the collective good of all South Africans. Just now, on the other hand, you have black people who are just looking after themselves, and white people who think, but there's nothing good that can come out of black people. Let those who are pursuing what is good, black and white, join hands and together find solutions to the challenges that confront our people.
Okay. Jabulani Mzalia says, would the Chief Justice, in his personal capacity, not as the Chief Justice, support the reopening of an inquest into Chief Luthuli's mysterious death?
Well, I alluded to the death of Chief Albert Luthuli, and that we don't know what the real cause of his death is. I think every family deserves to know what became of their loved ones. If an injustice was perpetrated, then it's only fitting that we go deep into the root causes of his death. And if anybody, dead or alive, was responsible for his death, then that person must be dealt with, or a necessary pronouncement to that effect needs to be made.
All right. Do you believe the legal system in South Africa currently helps to address the injustices outlined in your speech and help empower those who have for so long been disadvantaged in South Africa? Are we dealing with these issues of inequality appropriately?
Well, the legal system, the constitution and the laws are adequate. to deal with these issues. There's just one fundamental problem. We don't implement in South Africa. We have the best systems, the best laws, the best rules. Implementation or commitment to implement is our problem. I mean, I'm sorry to deviate, to go back. Just ask yourself one question. Demonstrative of our commitment to resolve the land issue. Over the years, how much have we been budgeting for the land issue? Then you'll get your answer.
Wow. Okay. I'm just wondering, as the Chief Justice, your challenge is issues come to you. You can't go fishing for them and looking for them, but I know that you sit often and there are things that you see that you're hungry to sit with. I'm not sure if you're allowed to answer this, but is there an issue that concerns you deeply that you wish that the lawyers and the legal society would bring before you so that we get finality on it once and for all?
Not really. You know, it's amazing how my life has been. I get called by all sorts of people for different reasons to come and address them. Not so long ago, I was called by a group of psychologists to come and address them on leadership from a psychological perspective. So I find myself addressing any possibly burning issue in the course of being called to meetings like this, which is more effective than a judgment because not many people read judgments. Not many people know what our pronouncements as the courts are. But if you have a forum like this, you are able to engage with people, even if it's only 5 people who get to understand what the message is, they will go and spread it, and ultimately the problem will be addressed.
All right. Time's not on our side, so one last one. And you spoke about speaking truth and to stop tap dancing. So this question says, what does the Honourable Chief Justice think is the reason for a lack of appetite for respected leaders from the black community to talk truth when current black leaders seem to be dropping the ball?
You know, just reflect on the personalities that you regarded as, or everybody regarded as firebrands some years back, real revolutionaries. And check how many of them addresses issues of land, the need for African people or black people in general to participate meaningfully in the mainstream economy. How many of them talk about racism? How many of them say apartheid is bad? And why is it that not many of them are saying that? Check, just looking at their lifestyle, how much they appear to have, whether they are directors of big companies or not, whether they suddenly became multimillionaires or not. And as somebody said, you really can't talk much when you are chewing. And you can't talk about the one who put that food inside of your mouth.
Chief Justice, it's been an honor. Thank you very, very much indeed. A big hand, ladies and gentlemen, for
Thank
Chief
you.
Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng. Okay. Chief Justice, what I'd like you to do is not to go away, because right now I'm going to call upon the following representatives to join us on stage for a small ceremonial part of this occasion. And I'd like to call upon the Luthuli Museum Council members, a representative from the Luthuli family, a representative from the Department of Arts and Culture, and a representative from the University of KwaZulu-Natal to join us on the stage. And whilst they do this, if you could come up straight away, please come up. Hey, my brother, good to see you, man. That's great. Sure. All right, so one of the things that happens at this lecture each year is that a young artist is recognized from a group of artists who either approach the Luthuli Museum and say, I've got this ability and I would like to produce an artwork of Chief Albert Luthuli. And can I just have your attention? Thanks. Chief Albert Luthuli. And so they look at the work that's done by these young artists, and a lot of them very, very talented. And in many ways, it's to find an artist who's able to express, I guess, the embodiment of Chief Albert Luthuli in picture. And I'm very excited to say that this year is the first time a female artist has been recognized. And you're going to see the work just now. This is a young woman from KwaDukuza who has chosen screen printing as her form of work. And you'll find a little bit more about her in your packs on this little card. And you'll find there Thulisizwe Mchali. Is Thulisizwe here? Can she come up? Where is Thulisizwe? Let's give her a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. This incredibly talented young woman is the person that's responsible for this screen print that's about to be presented to Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng. A big hand for Thulisizwe. Right. I'm not sure who does the pulling of the... Are you the one? Is it the Chief Justice? So, Chief Justice, please unveil this picture, which is now actually being presented to you. On 3. 1, 2, 3. And that is the amazing work of Thulisizwe Mchali. Thulisizwe, you're amazing. Okay, has everybody got their picture? Okay, you're the one that counts the most. Were you in focus? Yes? All right. Fantastic. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, our thanks to Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng for his profound and inspiring words. And to Thulisizwe Mchali, thank you so much indeed for your Thulisizwe. Thulisizwe. Well done. Really, really amazing. Thulisizwe, you've got to smile. This is your big day. Do you want a picture next to it? Okay. There we go. There we go. A big hand once again, ladies and gentlemen, to Lisiwem Charlie and Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng. All right, just before we start wrapping things up, there is an important announcement that needs to be made, and that's the announcement of the winner of the Luthuli Museum University of KwaZulu-Natal High School Moot Court Competition. Could we have a future Chief Justice here, I wonder? Let's find out from Ms. Ayanda Dlamini.
Sanibonani nonke. Ninjani. Janine Hicks ngumfundisi enyuvesi ya KwaZulu-Natal. Ngibingelela umama Dr. Albertina Luthuli and the chairperson of the council, the Luthuli Museum Council, our Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng. We're very honored to be with you today. The reason we're here is to very shortly, briefly share with you an exciting project that we did as the School of Law in partnership with the Luthuli Museum. So I'm a lecturer in the law school, and as part of the law school, we have this wonderful program called street law, okay? Which doesn't mean the law of the street prevailing, but it's about taking law to people so that you don't need lawyers. What do you do when you're being ripped off when you're buying that stove? What do you do when the police come and they're beating you up when they're arresting you? What do you do if you're a child at school and you're facing cyberbullying? What do you do when we're facing hate crimes against gay and lesbian people within our community? What are your rights? Where can you get help? What can you do to deal with those human rights violations? So in 2018, we were approached, it's a lovely story, by Uzinhle Nyembe, who works with the Luthuli Museum. And she said, can the School of Law help us? We want to work with schools surrounding the Luthuli Museum, and we want to help them perform well in the National Schools Moot Competition. Now, a moot competition for the schools program is when young school kids come together and they argue like a debate as if they were before a Chief Justice. They argue points of law. And the Luthuli Museum wanted the kids from their area to do well in the school's moot competition. And they wanted to know, can the law school help our young kids do well? So through our wonderful street law program, we had a team of 7 of our street law students who are our 4th year students. I've got one of them with me here today, Mr. Barry Todd. Wave your hand. We had a team of 7 students working with learners. There were 17 school pupils from high schools around the Luthuli Museum. And over a number of Saturdays, they had workshopped 20 hours together. We worked with these young students on understanding what are human rights. How do you argue a legal debate? How do you argue your constitutional rights? In the problem scenario was a school where a family was too poor to buy their child the blazer for the school uniform, and the school wanted to chase the child out of the school. How would we argue that point? Okay? So we trained and worked with these young students, and we brought them finally to Howard College Law School, and we held a moot court debate. And finally, there were 6 schools. It was very exciting, 6 schools in the final program, and we chose a winning team. But our judges chose one overall outstanding student who we felt was the overall winner of the program. And she's standing next to me. I'm going to introduce you to her just now. She has been offered, our dean of our law school put together a bursary, and if Ayanda, and this is her name, if Ayanda decides to study law at the School of Law. We will contribute towards her law school fees. Okay? So we wanted this opportunity. I'm afraid there was a lovely video, but I hear it hasn't been set up. There was a short video to show you us at the Luthuli Museum at the law school. But what I'm going to do now is introduce to you Ayanda Dlamini and invite her to come and speak to you shortly and briefly and tell you what the spirit of Chief Albert Luthuli means to her, what her experience was like going through this program, and what her dreams are as a young schoolgirl moving forward. So, Ayanda.
Greetings to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings to all of you, the distinguished guests, and everybody present in this room. My heart is filled with joy, and I'm grateful for the opportunity that I got to be able to explore, the law part of. Thank you. I'm very grateful to have been able to get this opportunity to go to these training sessions and be able to receive, training from the law students from UKZN School of Law. I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I got to be able to study law at the University of UKZN. As we all know that it's a very good university, and it's every child's dream to finish school and go to university. And for me, being able to go to a university of my choice, a university that I would have loved to go to from the start, is absolutely amazing. I mean, this competition was very helpful to me because it helped me gain skills that I'll be able to utilize not only now, but in future. The competition was very much compelling, not just because of the skills that I gained, but because of its complexity, and it allowed me to be open-minded and to look to decipher things for what they really are and not just look at the information that we were given. I was able to look beyond the information. I was able to do what we were taught and to also apply not only the law and the constitutional case laws that were provided, but also to apply my own emotions and be able to argue a case aggressively. I'd never done it before. It was my first time, and I was actually amazed at what I could say and do. I was amazed at the confidence that I just suddenly gained. To me, it was an amazing experience, and I'll forever be grateful to Ms. Zinhle Nyembe and to the University of KwaZulu-Natal and the Chief Albert Luthuli Museum for giving us a chance, and especially because I'm an African woman who is an aspiring, I want to do great things. I want I want to stand up. I want to fight and be the voice of the many people of this country. So for me, it was a good platform to be able to just stand there and argue a case and put myself in an SGB's shoes, to put myself in a principal's shoes, even when I'm just a mere learner. It was really great for me because I was able to do what I did not know I could do. I was able to unleash my potential, the potential that I never thought I possessed. And for me, that was absolutely amazing because there was so much to gain. There was so much skills, critical thinking skills, because a wise man once said that things are not always what they seem to be. And for me, I was able to read a case, comprehend fully, and be able to agree with it, at the same time disagree with it. It was a challenge. It challenged my thoughts, it challenged my beliefs, and I had a lot to gain from it. I learned how to grow intellectually. I learned how to stand in front of people and be able to express myself fearlessly. And for me, that is the most important thing that I learned from this competition, apart from just learning about law and principles and being able to understand the principles, the laws, and everything that's associated with law, being able to go in a courtroom and obey all the rules, being able to address certain people in a certain manner. That for me was very much pleasing. It was very pleasing to get. It was just such an amazing experience because I learned so much, and the knowledge, I won't utilize it only just for now, but also in the future. And I will always be grateful, and I hope that this carries on to help the other learners and the other black females and the males, you know, the black children who think that they can't be the voice of the nation, that they can't be the voice of the many people that have a lot to say. For me, it's just an amazing platform to showcase and to encourage young people to stand up for what is right, to fight for the equalization and the liberty for people of our country. Thank you very much.
Don't you think we chose well? I have no doubt Ayanda is going to go on and do all of those things. We want to just